I'm calling this meeting to order. At this point, I'll be conducting a roll call. Allison Angelini,
Present.
Russell Holmberg,
Present.
Mike Morelli,
Present.
Katie Uhas,
Present.
Steve Martik. He might be in transit. Bill Thorne. And he's present. Okay. At this point, I'll ask for any residents' comments. Hearing none. Whoop, did I hit something?
There's a hand raised, Bruce.
Oh, I didn't see it.
I'm here, but it won't let me unmute. Hello? Present.
Hello? Present, okay.
Present. No,
Steve.
I'm here.
Can I
It
speak
wouldn't let
or
me
is
unmute, but
it
I'm here.
okay?
Present.
Hello? Hi there.
Okay. Steve Martik is
You hear
here,
me?
we know that. Steve, we have you listed as being present. I guess, resident comment, Mr. Paul Mogul.
All right, thank you very
You have the
much.
floor.
Yeah, Paul Mogul Sierra Vineyards over in Colonel Ledyard Highway, 827. I see on your new business here, you have an action item looking for ways to secure more farmland without having to purchase new farmland. At a recent town council meeting, the town council gave a bit of land, which looked pretty nice for farming to me, to the Avalonia group. This is a very nice site, but they retained the ability to take back, have right of first refusal should Avalonia want to sell this in the future. Seems to me if Ledyard is going to continue to donate or set aside lands with these nonprofit groups, including Avalonia and others, that perhaps some caveat could be put in that gift that that land could potentially be loaned out, where it doesn't conflict with Avalonia's goals to or other could conflict with their uses. In other words, you could farm that land without harming the goals of Avalonia or any other nonprofit who receives land from the town of Ledyard. It seems that would expand the ability to farm without having to own the land, which is a big deal. And they are tax exempt. So would the farmer who works that land be also farmer exempt, tax exempt on that property? Perhaps so. After all, the town of Ledyard does allow farmers to use lands that it owns. That was my thought on your action item on item number 2. So I just thank you very much for listening. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other residents' comments? And we'll probably refer to this, what Mr. Mogul was talking about when we get to the researching there, that on the new business, we'll be looking at that. Are there any informational items from anybody? With none being, is there any objection to the dispensing of the reading of the minutes, since they've all been distributed? Any changes to the minutes as distributed?
No.
I will take a motion to have the minutes accepted as distributed.
I'll motion to have the minutes accepted. Allison Angelini.
I have a second,
Mike Morelli, I second that.
and the minutes are accepted without exception. Now, we're going on to unfinished business. First of all, with the joint research partnership program with the state of Connecticut, I believe Katie had some questions she was going to ask Cam. So if we could have Katie.
Sure. So Bruce sent along a couple questions. I'll just read through them here. First question was, on average, how long does it take from first applying to completion, the whole land preservation process? And Cam responded with the duration depends on several factors, but on average, it's about 2 to 3 years to get through all of the different, like the surveys and the easements and all that stuff. The second question was, can land that had been developed, that has the development rights sold, could they ever be developed? Cam said it's very unlikely. It has not happened for any of the 380 plus farms in Connecticut, the protected farms. The removal of the PDR easement restriction requires the commissioner of ag, proving that it would be in the public's best interest. There would have to be public hearings and a town vote to be able to reverse all that. The third question was, if the rights are sold so that the development may occur, does the original owner have the rights of first refusal of the land? And he just responded with not applicable because it hadn't, I guess, because it hasn't happened. Can this land be swapped for other land then be developed? He replied, not applicable. And then the fifth question was, who makes the decision on reversing the development protection and what safeties are in place to prevent it? And he refers us back to the answer that he had for question number 2, which was the Ag Commission, or the Commissioner of Ag, sorry, and then public hearings and town vote. And I
Okay.
didn't receive any other questions. Did I miss anyone's question? And if you have any, I'm sorry.
Are there any other questions for Kate?
Yeah, just a question. This is Bill Thorne. How many parcels, properties do we have in Ledyard where the development rights have been bought? I think the one big one down on Shoeville, but are there others?
I'm not sure. I will check with Cam. I know that there's 380 in the state. I'm not sure how many in Ledyard. And Cam apologizes. He wanted to try to call into the meeting. He has a new baby at home, so it kind of makes it difficult for him to have evening meetings. But he's very good at responding to emails, so I will ask him that question about Ledyard, and if you have any others, just let me know.
I mean, wouldn't the town know that? In terms of taxation and all? I mean, wouldn't they know which pieces of property have the development rights purchased?
I'm sure they do. I do not.
Okay. Because we do have the list, which is was it PA 490 list? But yeah, it doesn't indicate which ones have the development rights bought and which ones are just under that particular law. Yeah, okay.
It'll be easy enough for me to find out. I will let you know.
Any other questions for Katie? Any other questions on now? Okay. Moving on, so to the farmland properties, to continue the review and discuss the list of farmland properties. I think that's something we've already touched upon. And is there any other unfinished business to come before the committee?
No, but, well, getting back to some of the grants. The Connecticut Agricultural Viability Grant, I was thinking the fair is trying to get going again. They are a nonprofit. Are they familiar with that? The Fair Commission with that program? It would be matching funds, but they may have funds. I just don't know if there's anybody I don't know anybody on the Fair Commission. Would that be a grant that they may be interested in? Could we let them know?
Any comments?
Rich Kent pretty well. I can give him a holler, but I haven't really received viability grants. I don't think that's gonna be a good fit for the fair, just because they tend to make money. I don't know. It's usually like no retail component. I could be wrong there though, so I can certainly pass it along.
And I know that the guidelines around the viability grant are changing. There's like a big revamping of the marketing department. And I guess they're going I'm not sure of the details, but I know that the viability grant requirements are going to change. So as soon as I know what those are, I'll make sure that everyone here knows about them as well. Because I inquired about a few different things, like trying to figure out what other towns are doing and how they're using this money. And, you know, I got some feedback of how it was used in the past, but that doesn't necessarily mean that will be available in the future. And they just told me to hold tight for another few months. And once the new requirements roll out, we can look into it.
Anyone else? Okay,
I think that it's a pretty in-depth application process. And they usually, I remember that last year they announced it like mid-February and they were due late February. So you sort of have to have everything together like in November in order to make sure it's all edited and put together in time. So I guess I would just, I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but keeping the timeline in mind, it might not be feasible for this year.
Any other comments?
I would just add, kind of to follow up on what Allison said, the grant's kind of a means to the end. It's not the end. So the first thing you do is say, hey, what are we trying to do here? And does it require money? And if so, could we use a grant to get that money? But you gotta have what you're gonna do. You gotta have the funding in place, like everything really well lined up. So it's not working like, oh, we're gonna work towards a grant. We're gonna work towards a goal, and a grant might be part of that. So I'd say as far as applying for something like a viability grant, we're a long ways off as a group before we'd be ready for that.
I wasn't thinking of the town or this commission. I was just thinking of the the fair committee. They might be interested in something like this. They would take care of it, because the grant is also used to promote agriculture in a town, et cetera, celebration. I figured it fits in with, perhaps they can use that money for infrastructure, surveying, utilities, something, because the fair is going to be a long-term project themselves, I understand, before they really get everything up and running. So it may fit in for them in the long term. I wasn't thinking of it from us so much as just to inform them. And so, you know, in case, you know, they weren't familiar with it.
And another thing to keep in
So this
mind.
is Councilor Dombrowski. Just as a point of reference, that the Fair Association is not a committee of the town. It is an independent organization. We can pass that information along to them, but right now they have no long-range plan to what they're going to go do. The one piece of property that they were looking at, they backed out on.
Okay.
And I'll have to clarify. So when I asked, you know, for some examples, like what are specifically agricultural commissions asking for? The lady that ran the grant last year was like, we don't have many ag commissions. It usually comes from the town. So I'll have to clarify a little bit if it's committee or if it's how it's done. So once I get all the information, I'll pass it on so we can see if there's anybody in the town that it would fit, including us.
Now, this is Bill Thorne, but it does seem, I mean, I know we're, you know, we just mentioned the fair, but I mean, isn't part of our, I don't know, our charter to help some of the other farmers, not obviously apply for these grants, but to give them a heads up? And as Allison said, it sounds like there's a long lead time. And if you're not prepared, you're not going to get it because there's not enough time to. So I mean, I think that's something we may want to look at in terms of other farms in the town and helping them, or at least informing them of what's involved and the lead time involved and that kind of stuff. I mean, I would think that's something we might want to do.
Yep, and as soon as those new requirements roll out, I'll make sure that I bring it back to this group, and then we can figure out what that looks like, Bill.
One way of reaching, this is Bruce, one way of reaching people in town is through the events magazine as well. That might be a very good option for us to just put it out to the public and alert the farmers that, you know, the development rights can be sold, and it is a long process, like you say, 2 to 3 years on average. So that might be an option that we can utilize to get the word out that there's a committee here to help. Any other comments? Moving on to new business. Explore options available to secure more farmland other than purchasing the development rights. More specifically, if the town could place the land designated for open space from developers into a combination of open space and farmland with development rights restrictions placed on it. And the only reason I brought this up is a couple reasons. Number one, the time frame is not 2 or 3 years out. The other thing you have is you have a developer, he's going to do the surveying. If we already have, and we have the land, the suitable land for farming in town, and it's already been mapped out, it might be an option for us to help both the developer and also the town. Because if the developer could reduce, say for instance, and I'm just throwing a figure out, 50% of the open space that he donates to the town, and he put it into farmland, he would have another building lot with the farm, with the development rights restricted on it. So I didn't know if anybody thought that might be an option that we should explore through the planning and zoning. I guess that would be the route to go, but since they control most of the open space portions.
Hey, Bruce, I have a question though. You know, I mean, if we're looking at some of the new zoning, and it's granted the proposed new zoning, and we're talking multiple acres, 5 acres, I think. I mean, so are you talking more like community, you know, community farming where people purchase little lot, or not purchased, but had little lot plots? So it wasn't considered a farm per se, because otherwise you're talking multiple acres in order to be, quote, a farm by some of the new zoning they're talking about.
I wasn't making any specifics. I was just exploring if there would be an option where we could have some of the open space designated as farmland. And depending on what you're farming, you know, 2 acres, 3 acres, it depends on what the product is you're trying to produce, whether it's agriculture or whether it's animal husbandry. They've got different qualifications. And you have some land in Ledyard that's all ledge, which isn't good for raising tomatoes, but it's probably good goat country. So I think there's some assets that the town has, and it wouldn't cost the town anything to pursue it. And when if you have somebody with a lot of land who's going to sell, they're probably not looking at selling the development rights and taking 2 and 3 years to do it. The town would have this as built right into their regulations, so that if they sold the land, now the farmer doesn't have to worry about all that. It would be taken care of through the town, such as the open space is now. It's just a thought.
Are there farmers in town that are actively looking for land? Like, do we have an understanding of what that need looks like?
Personally, I know of one farmer who was looking for like 10 acres for llamas, and that was one person.
Do you think there's any interesting in community farming? You know, people plots. I mean, I know that's more of an urban idea than a rural idea like we have, but I was just kind of curious because I mean, I think that would be something where you could take some, you know, land that was put off for open space and use it for community, as opposed to just sitting there as open space, you know, more of a community farming option. But anyways.
So I can answer some of that question. There has been some interest from several organizations to do
Excuse me,
CSA
who
farm.
is speaking?
Hello,
Would you please identify yourself?
this is Councilor Dombrowski.
Oh, okay.
So
Thank you.
there has been in the past some interest in specific, I'll say the Arc of New London, who has requested for CSA farming activities in town. So from that standpoint, there is interest. I'm not going to say that there isn't. The issue you bring up though is kind of a convoluted one, because typically, and this really has to go to the planning and zoning, so you have to get like Nate Woody and to weigh in as far as from the plan of conservation and development. But typically, developers who develop properties and turn over a portion for increased density and give open space to the town. Normally, and Mike Morelli, you might be able to, because your committee, conservation, usually the one who ends up with most of this, is not suitable for farming. It's usually wetlands. It's usually rocky terrain. It's usually property that is not, and to the point, the parts that you would want to develop as farms are the ones that the developers want to turn into houses. And then it becomes to the way that the open space works is it's held in perpetuity by the town or a conservancy as open space, not as farming. So if you're going to say you're going to do it as farming, the town doesn't benefit, but the town owns the property and can't turn it over to a farm. You'd have to change the plan of conservation and development to say that you would deed that open space to a farm, with the town getting right of first refusal. Actually, it would have to convey back to the town if that farm decides to no longer farm.
Thanks for that. I was going to offer all that too from a farmer's perspective. They really tend to be the kind of ground that I'm not interested in farming. When I see those parcels go in, it's really usually the wet stuff and the rocky stuff. And the first thing I do is clear. It doesn't matter if I was growing apple trees or blueberry bushes or putting animals on it. There'd be considerable clearing, and all of those have deed restrictions that say you can't even cut brush off of it. So it would be a lot by lot deed modification for each one of those parcels. Between the town and the individual, it'd be kind of cumbersome. And yeah, you really have to look at, first of all, is anybody asking for it? And second of all, after somebody asks for it, is it really worth it? I mean, it might be one of those like one-offs that there's a few parcels in town where it applies for, but it seems like a lot of legwork if there's not a lot of interest in it. It might be a real uphill battle.
Yeah, this is Allison Andini. I think that one of the other challenges for farmers is a lot of the time these town parcels require significant infrastructure investment before you can grow on them, whether it's irrigation or fencing or both. And so making sure that, as we had talked about last week, there's an option for a longer term lease before those investments are made can be a key challenge as well.
Any other comments? Do you think it's worth exploring, I guess is what I'm looking at. Maybe presenting something to planning and zoning?
I think from a town perspective, this is Councilor Dombrowski, it would be a very cumbersome process for the town to develop, and it's not going to be at no cost to the town.
There's potential for huge pushback from budding lot owners, because any kind of modification of that land, just, you know, hey, I bought it in a subdivision and I thought it was just a wooded lot, and now why is he doing something to what is town property, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It seems pretty cumbersome unless there's a specific property that's worth pursuing. I think in the abstract, it's hard for me to imagine a lot of utility to it.
I can say most of the open space in the town, with the exception of the 2 lots that are up on 117, way up there, Clark Farm, etc. I don't see of anything that's farmable that belongs to the town. Everything's wooded. Now, I understand that for a number of years, somebody's been leasing up there. I guess he's haying, or perhaps at one time he was planting silage up there. I mean, the town could lease sections like up there, but other than that, I'm not seeing a whole heck of a lot in town that's really farmable.
Any other comments? And speaking of the land there, the Clark Farm, I did speak with Walter. I met with Walter, walked the property, and he is from Preston. His father and he was leasing that property for 50 years or better. And what he's interested in, and I'm sure you remember, he's looking at like a five-year lease. And in order to do that, he's got to go through the mayor, town council, and then goes through land use, and then back up to the town council, and then through a referendum. But I think one thing that's important is that if we have land like that in the town, it would be wise to get somebody that does farm it. And one of the possibilities would be where land use could say how they are going to restrict farming on that land, such as if they're going to do planting corn, do the no-till method. If it's down near the brook, hay is probably a good way to go. So, but I know Ledyard does look like a pretty tough area to farm, but I'm sure everybody's aware that no matter where you go, there's stone walls in Ledyard. So if there's stone walls, years ago, they actually had animals out there, depending on what they were.
You know, and this is Bill Thorne, and Bruce, I think you hit upon, you know, something, and I understand the concern, you know, about what's farmable, what's usable, and all the red tape involved. But I think that's one of the things we can help with and should help with is as much as possible, just facilitating people that want to farm and want to use the land and help them move things along within the town and within the state. I mean, I sort of think that's what one of our missions is. So, you know, if somebody is interested in that property and getting a 5-year lease, and it may be a pipe dream, but I think it would be great if we could just help it along.
Hey, Bill, any other comments? Anybody have any other business, new business to come before the commission?
This is Bill Thorne again, sorry. Can I ask about the list that was distributed? I ended up getting it via Allison, but I think it came from the assessor's office. I mean, it's a pretty extensive list of farms in Ledyard with acreage, total acreage, farm acreage, and then there was another list with the people that had applied for the was it PA 490, the tax exempt status. You know, I was surprised. I mean, I knew a few farms. I've been here 30 something years, and I knew a few farms, but this is a pretty extensive list. Is there any way we can sort of reach out to them, find out what farming they do? I guess, for lack of a better term. I don't know how you get on this list, or even get on that, you know, how you apply and get on the PA 490 list to get the tax exempt status. But I mean, maybe we can carve it up. And I mean, I've driven by a few of them. That's all I can do. I mean, I don't feel like I can drive down their driveway, say hi, when it's built I'm on the Ag Commission, but is there any way we can reach out to some of these people and find out what's kind of going on?
Any comments other than writing a letter to them? I mean, we could always write a letter.
This is Bill again. Does anybody know what gets them on this list? How do they get on this list?
This is Allison Angelini. When I applied for our small farm, I think to get on the tax assessors list, it's because we pay taxes for the farm. And we also have an exemption for machinery. And the application process for PA 490 is separate. It's assessed based on use of each parcel, so hayfield is assessed differently than a woodlot used for agricultural use, or assessed differently from field cultivated for fruits or vegetables. So it's the reason there's two lists is because there are two separate things. I believe that you can have land in PA 490, but not necessarily be an active farm that's paying taxes. And you can also have an active farm that's paying taxes and not have your land under PA 490. So there's often overlap, but that's why the lists are different. And that's just my understanding.
Yeah, this is Bill again. The list for the PA 490 is much smaller than the list, extensive list for farms. Now, it could be the fact that, if you look at, there's a grouping on the list. I mean, I guess I would just like to understand. I mean, these are the list of farms, and the list of people have a tax exempt. It would just be nice to understand, who they are, what they do. I mean, otherwise we're just talking.
Comments?
The two lists there, actually the longer list is the PA 490. The shorter list is the actively, the properties that are actively being farmed, that are listed officially as farms with the Ledger Tax Office.
Yeah, you might be right, because for example, on the PA 40 list, it lists Allen's Red Barn, but if you look at the other list, Allen's listed, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I don't know, nine times, I don't know. So yeah, in truth, maybe the 490 list is longer, but just in terms of numbers, I mean, I don't even know what I'm talking about. I mean, I just got these lists and I drove by a couple of them just to see what they were, and I couldn't figure it out. So, I mean, if we're about the Ag Commission, we gotta know what these are. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy.
If I'm not mistaken, this is Bruce. I believe you have to file with what you are with the town assessor.
Yes.
I think the answer might be right there on the list, because when it lists a 490, you have to write down what you're doing. Because if you're off the road down a long driveway, people aren't necessarily going to see you.
Yeah, I think the PA 490 is probably, my guess is just based on the tax exempt, significant tax exempt advantage. It's probably a pretty long application. But, again, some of these other lists, I don't know. I mean, I was after living here for 30 plus years, I was surprised to see how long the list was of, quote, farms, I guess. You know, this list of farms, which, I don't know, maybe you all know about them, but I sure don't.
Town's website, I don't know if it still has it now because they updated it a short while ago, but at one time they had a list of farms, and it described what they were producing, where they were, whether you could visit, whether you could make an appointment. I don't know if that list is still with the town. If another list was put together and put on the town's site, again, that would advertise the town's, the different farms to the residents, so they'd begin to know where they were. The Conservation Commission just recently did all their trails again, mapped everything, put out a survey. We asked everybody about it, and the biggest thing that everybody said is, where are they and how do I find them? So again, if we, somehow get together a list, have it, posted, like you say, either in the events magazine or on the town's website, that would be a benefit too. It may also be a benefit to us, because then we would know what's being produced where.
This is Allison Angelini. It's my recollection that the last time that list was compiled was when Bob Burns had applied for that grant back in, I think it was around 2014 or 2013, in coordination with the farmers market. And also that there weren't that many farms on the list that were open to the public. But that certainly could have changed, because I believe it was back in 2013 or 14 that last list was published.
If not for us to get a good idea of what everybody is producing, at least it might benefit the other farms who would like to see the public. And it would be a way to promoting the farms in the town.
Any other comments? Any other new business? Well, if that's the case, I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
Second that motion.
And this meeting is now adjourned at 6:41 without exception. Thank you.